Kyle Crabbs has a brand new mock draft that's available, and we're going to break it down for you here today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Crabbs from Locked On Dolphins. And we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to issue a big thank you, shout out, and welcome to our everydayers. Those of you who never miss a single episode, we appreciate y'all being here very, very much. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. PrizePicks, run your game.
Joe, college football is officially back. We saw another Brian Kelly meltdown last night. USC, Big Ten, big win over the SEC on a neutral site game as our Trojans
fight on
7-20, with the 2-minute offense. Really nice palate cleanser. I said somebody on the timeline, I think it was Sam Teets. That game last night in the quarterback play was what it was supposed to be on Saturday night with Riley Leonard and Connor Wegman with Notre Dame and Texas A&M. That was like 6-6 at half, and everybody's like, these guys might be top 5 quarterbacks in the class. And they couldn't complete 4 passes more than 5 yards downfield. Both these quarterbacks, Garrett Nussmeier and why am I blanking on the USC kid?
Is it Mason May?
Let me float around and produce this thing. But yeah, both those guys played really well, and you got a good chance at some really talented quarterback play last night in Las Vegas with Garrett Nussmeier and Miller Moss.
Miller Moss. I knew it was
Miller
two
Moss,
M's.
yeah.
Mason May, Miller Moss, tomatoes.
It's early.
I saw it coming for Notre Dame and LSU. I didn't see points coming there. I smashed the under on the points of 46.
Yeah, but how much did you bet?
I'm not telling you. Not telling you.
That
guy can go kick rocks is what he can do. Okay. I guess we'll kind of get to some more college football talk as we reflect on Kyle Crabbs' mock draft 1.0, available now at the 33rdteam.com. You can see all the picks as Kyle puts together his premier forecast for this season. And I got a chance to see it for the first time, like maybe 5 minutes before we started recording. So I've got questions. I'm excited to break this down with you, Kyle, here. And the first thing I really want to know from you is, like, this is always a big thought exercise the first time you put together your first mock draft cycle. Like, what'd you learn? How are you feeling about this class now that you've stacked it up a little bit?
I think this is a good class. I think there's a lot of talent in a lot of important spots. And you look at offensive tackles. I've got 3 in the top half of the draft, and then I get another 2 or 3 that definitely got in the back half of the first round, and a couple of the names that I thought maybe could have snuck in. Wide receivers. It's an intriguing corner class. There's a lot of compelling players with different profiles on the edge. And the quarterback group has players with questions, but you're going to see more guys that continue to emerge. Now, spoiler alert, we needed a healthy reminder from Google about Miller Moss. He's a redshirt junior, first-year starter at USC, but spoiler alert, he didn't make the first round because he played in the bowl game in last year and now getting his start. Sample size with some of these guys that didn't make it into the first round version that I put together. It's tough because you want to be able to project. You want to be able to extrapolate traits and look ahead. But there were a couple of guys that I just like Nussmeier on the other side last night. Like, I knew that was a name going in that I had circled and said, hey, like, he could be a potential riser. I thought he played really well last night.
Yeah.
But as somebody who, Jaden Daniels was a starter last year and won the Heisman, like he hasn't really had the chance to showcase himself. So you made a couple of decisions with guys like that, but I look top to bottom. It's not like I felt like I was pulling teeth except for maybe the last 4 or 5 spots to get guys that I'm like, yeah, I think he has a really strong resume to be in this conversation.
It's funny, you just mentioned the top 2 picks from last year. Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, their replacements, right? Like, those guys got to play a little bit, and who knows, maybe that'll shape this quarterback class, because I feel like, I mean, every draft is about the quarterbacks, which we'll get into in just a moment. But what excites me about looking through your mock draft here and seeing the positional distribution, I see positions that I love evaluating. I see defensive line, I see wide receivers, and I feel like so much of what the NFL is craving right now. Of course, they want O-line. Of course, they want quarterbacks, these guys that can play in the secondary. All that matters. But can you affect the quarterback with your rush, and can you make plays in the passing game as a receiver? Feels like this is another crop of prospects that's going to infuse the NFL with those types of players that can really impact games.
Yeah, and different types. Like really wide receiver. Just the first 2 that came off the board for me was T-Mac McMillan from Arizona, who had 10 for 304 yards and 4 touchdowns, and fell most of that came in the first 2.5 quarters, and then he had a ball where he was down at the 1 yard line that would have been his 5th touchdown. So that guy's 6'5", dominant ball skills. We're doing him this week, right?
Yeah, I feel like he was on the list. Yeah. So
we're going to do a spotlight on him a little later in the week. And then Luther Burden, the third from Missouri, is like, I don't want to say an inverse kind of player, but he's a very different kind of player. He's a little bit more Malik Abrams. Yeah. Big. He was second in all of FBS last year in yards after catch. Really explosive. He can fly. He's got good contact balance. They get scheme touches for him, but he also wins down the field. And you can just kind of pick through Isaiah Bond, now with Texas, made it into the first round. That was a player who you saw the red zone separation that he was able to create if you watched any of the Texas game or the highlights of the Texas game over the weekend. So different types of players with different skill sets. And I think even like the defensive line group, we've talked about Mason Graham already, but as I'm looking at the other guys that are in here, like Tylik Williams from Ohio State, Deion Walker from Kentucky. Those guys are big guys. You're talking 315 to 330 pounds. Kenneth Grant was, I think, top 5 on Bruce Feldman's freaks list as the other, air quotes, Michigan defensive tackle. I like this group a lot. This is probably the best top to bottom draft class that I've probably felt in September in a couple of years, since maybe 2021.
Very exciting things. It's nice to have a fun, deep, talented draft class to consider. And coming up on the other side of it, we're going to look at some of these quarterbacks. We know every draft is about the quarterbacks, and this is going to be an interesting year. We'll break down some of those landing spots here on the other side of it. Folks, be sure to stick with us. Football season is here. You know you want to get to the stadium, but sometimes getting tickets can be stressful. Doesn't have to be. Download the Game Time app. Game Time is the fast and easy way to purchase tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. I love the app. It's easy to navigate. They give you flash deals. They specialize in last-minute tickets, which is super cool because you can't always decide weeks or months in advance if you can go to something. You can get tickets right on the Game Time app the day of events and get great deals on them. They give you a seat view and their best price guarantee. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. What time is it? It's game time. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. When your schedule is packed with kids' activities, big work projects, and more, it's easy to let your priorities slip. Even when you know what makes us happy, it's hard to make time for it. But when you feel like you have no time for yourself, non-negotiables like therapy are more important than ever. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you do is fill out a brief questionnaire. That'll get you matched with a licensed therapist. And you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn. Quarterbacks, Kyle Crabbs. Let's talk about it. You got one going number one overall, Mr. Carson Beck from Georgia. I've seen one game, obviously, of Georgia, like the rest of the world, and they look like they are going to be nasty. Their dudes are different, man. Those dudes are different over there in Georgia. They got different players than the rest of the world.
Yeah.
But is this a number one overall core? Is he special, Kyle? Like, what's the deal here with Carson Beck?
He's clean. I think that's the number one thing about him. I think he's got good accuracy, not necessarily in the game against Clemson, but his body of work, you look at as a starter going back to last year, good execution in the middle of the field and being able to throw. I think he completed one ball more than 5 yards downfield between the hashes against Clemson. So that was not an illustration of that, but I almost think that's a good thing that you can take. If they're going to clog the middle of the field, you can take your completions outside the numbers if you need to, but he has a big body of work last year as a starter, is having success throwing over the middle of the field. That's processing, that's decision-making, that's accuracy and timing. I think he has all those things at a pretty strong level. He gets rave reviews for his football intelligence. They were talking on the broadcast about they have the helmet communication now in college football.
Yeah.
And he just wants the play and he wants you to shut up so you can get up the line and process what's going on and make decisions and get the team in the right calls to have a successful play. So the Georgia coaches, very complimentary of his football intelligence, prototypical build for the position. I think he's got a good arm. I don't know that he's got a wow arm. There's some other guys in this class that have wow arms, but it's the floor. And then I'd say this I had the Giants having the first overall pick. No, I did the season prediction. I can see the league really liking the resume that like Shadeur Sanders puts out there. But if I'm making a football decision as far as like, where does Shadeur go to be in the best position for him to be successful? I don't have any questions that he can handle spotlight, but as the team, there's a whole lot of extra with that New York market, with how you've seen that New York market chew up and spit out just about everybody, right?
Everybody.
And I think Carson, he's a pretty low-key guy, even though he plays at Georgia. I think that fit within the ecosystem of what it is to play in New York was another contributing factor for me to say, you know what? I got a football spot that I like for Shadeur better. And then the fact that I don't have Shadeur playing in the New York market with what the New York market is notoriously like was the cherry on top.
There's a 2-minute warning now in college football, Kyle Crabbs. Did you catch that? Also,
they don't call it a warning, though. It's 2-minute timeout.
Yeah, I'm going to call it 2-minute warning.
Yeah, everybody is. Everybody in NCAA.
And Nick Saban, man, I watched him on game day. He had a lot of really nice things to say about Carson Beck as well. This is not really about your mock draft specifically, but I will say this. If you want to read Kyle's mock draft, please do. There's a link in today's show notes so you can check it out. Kyle's got, obviously, analysis to accompany every pick that is probably even more important than the picks themselves. I've done a daily podcast with you since August of 2016. All right, that's a lot of time.
Why did you look that up recently?
You'll find out later today.
Okay.
But we've been doing this for a long time together. I'm aware of how you talk about football and what you say about football. And one thing that you've really trended towards being a champion for is quarterbacks that work the ball to the middle of the field. And that showed up in your analysis right there of Carson Beck. So, like, what is this big revelation for you that this has become a very important thing? And am I right about my thought that this has become an emphasis for you?
You know, I think that is a fair assessment of kind of how I view the position. I would say working the ball outside and working the ball outside the numbers is a little bit more of a raw arm talent assessment of a player, where you got to have the right kind of juice and placement and velocity to be able to hit a lot of those throws, especially to the field, where there's more time for defenders to break and break on balls and attack the football. So if you just have the arm talent to throw with touch and velocity and get it up over a flat defender to an out and beat the safety to the spot on the sideline, that's raw arm talent for me. As compared to the middle of the field stuff, there's more bodies, there's more coverage mechanics. You're working with the safety spinning down. I think it requires a little bit more as far as consistency in the operation of how you get to your drop and making your progression through the drop with your post-snap confirmation, and then throwing with accuracy with a good decision. So it's almost like the ISO game in basketball, if that makes sense. You see some teams in basketball, and they got a really skilled shot creator and ball handler, and everybody just kind of clears out and posts up on the corners and then in the edge of the key, and we're going to try to let a guy take a one-on-one. I look at outside the number throws and guys that like to work those and say, okay, like, that's great, but there's a lot more that goes into, especially if teams are going to have matchups on the outside where they can cover your receivers, or alternatively, if they're going to take that coverage and force you into the middle of the field, how do you handle it?
Interesting thoughts there. I like that. I'm glad I was able to kind of peel that out because I've noticed it, and now I got to hear it from you. Shadeur Sanders goes number 7 to the Seattle Seahawks in this mock draft. Very logical destination, in my opinion.
I love it.
Yeah, I do love that. With Shadeur, and you've watched more than me, I feel like his results are better than his process. Maybe that's okay. Maybe that speaks to the upside. Where are you at with Shadeur? And why do you like Seattle?
So you look at what's in Colorado, and Shadeur likes to push the ball down the field. He wants to be aggressive. You think about Ryan Grubb as the offensive coordinator in there in Seattle with DK and Tyler and Jackson Smith and Jigba. And I think it's a really good mesh of what Shadeur wants to be as a player and how he plays the game. He's probably the most impressive quarterback in this class that I've seen thus far. And it's very early this year, obviously, but he had all of last year at Colorado to work with. Throwing in the pocket under the pressure in your face. And he hit a couple of throws against North Dakota State that were big time throws down the field with guys right in his face and right in his lap. The thing for Shadeur that I think is going to be the most important football thing for him to optimize this style of play is he's not a particularly dynamic athlete. I think he plays like he can be sometimes. He wants to get outside of structure, and I think he can win outside of structure and be fairly creative, but there's times where you just got to take the L and move on to the next play, right? And I think with Seattle, with their offensive line, that is still kind of, we'll find out a lot about it this year after some changes. I think that's the biggest question, but from a X's and O's, from a supporting cast standpoint, with a style of play perspective, Shadeur to Seattle, I think is a much better fit than going to New York with potentially a new head coach. Obviously, we have Malik Neighbors there who's supremely gifted, but what else do you have in the supporting cast that you know and feel really good about? You don't know. So I think Shadeur has a ceiling to play into, and the supporting cast being a little bit more primed to help him elevate that, I think is part of the process too for me choosing Seattle.
The NFL seems to like Quinn Ewers out of Texas. In fact, he's continuing to hold off Archie Manning, right, from being the quarterback there in Texas. You have him going, is it 19 to
17?
17 to Vegas. Certainly a logical quarterback destination. What do you think it is about Ewers that the NFL can't quit?
I think he's a really gifted arm. I think there's a lot of polish, at least off of last year. He looked a little bit more comfortable this year. Now they play Colorado State. It's not a laydown game, but I thought he looked like he was really comfortable on Saturday. Had the no-look pass in the red zone for a touchdown, manipulating zone defenders. If that part of his game does take leaps, I think I get a little bit more comfortable with him in this stratosphere. I had my questions with him off of his play last year. But I think working with Sarkisian, Steve's got a really good track record of guys getting primed for the NFL. So I think that's a dynamic. And then just the raw arm talent and the fact that he can move a little bit. I think you maybe have to find the right balance of mobility and durability for him, because he's a guy that has been banged up at times. I just think the arm talent's too good for some teams to quit.
Yeah. Well, there's another quarterback that's got a lot of arm talent. He's fun, buddy. He's fun. Cam Ward. Cam Ward, you've been on this train for, I feel like, 3 years now.
Yeah.
Here he is at the University of Miami. Boy, oh boy, Florida. You are not in good shape, boys and girls, down there in the swamp, man. I'll tell you, they're in that Virginia Tech bucket, like where some of these blue bloods that have just been in the dumps.
Yeah,
that's where Florida's at right now, buddy.
Which is crazy. I said this in a DM on Saturday. It feels like every Florida hire since Ron Zook by year 3 feels exactly like what they feel like right now.
It's incredible. You're exactly right. Yeah.
The only one that wasn't like that was Dan Mullen, who got fired after year 4. And I saw a stat, Dan Mullen, and he has as many losses as Billy Napier does, and Dan Mullen's coached effectively 2 more full seasons.
Did you see Dan Mullen retweeted that? I'm pretty sure.
Yes. He retweeted something.
He tweeted, I got it right here. The Florida coach that got fired went to 3 consecutive New Year's 6 games in his first 3 years and was let go in his 4th season. Dan retweeted that. Yeah. On the 31st. He's like, come on.
Dan's problem was he couldn't recruit, right? So then,
when we heard that, yes, that's what we've heard. Yes,
the program did the thing that every football program ever does when they have a problem. They way overcorrected, and they went and they got Billy Napier, who was known for recruiting his rear end off, and the football product's not very good. How is the University of Florida sitting here knocking around guys like Graham Mertz? I mean, the freshman looks really talented that they have.
Boy, Kyle, those have been the quarterbacks they've had, man.
Right.
It's
for forever.
Right.
It's crazy. And good quarterback plays hard to find, right? And there's 130 something programs at this level. So I understand it's hard. Transfer portal's a real life thing. You don't got to go get Graham Mertz from Wisconsin.
You could have completion percentage, Kyle. The completion percentage.
You could have been in the hunt for a guy like Cam Ward from Washington State.
Bada bing. All right. Yeah, he's unbelievably toolsy, right?
Yeah. The most creative passer, I think. Things that Cam Ward wins at. And it is important to remember he played wing T. He averaged 12 attempts per game for his college or for his high school career before he was completely non-recruited to play quarterback because he played at a wing T program. And then he went to Incarnate Word and threw the ball all over the place, put up monster numbers. He's still really raw. He's still got a lot of room to grow. And I thought he did a better job as that game went on against Florida, kind of settling into the game flow and the game script and not trying to do too much. That he can be his own worst enemy at times. I think you texted me at one point and says, is he going to average six seconds time to throw on every attempt? And sometimes it feels like that.
Right.
But he's really good with the ball handling. He's got good downfield accuracy. He's got good velocity. I think he's a better athlete than he gets credit for. You saw that with some of the scrambles that they had earlier in that game when he had to get off his spot. He's a big kid. He's got that prototypical frame. But I really like the ball handling for the play action, the RPO kind of stuff. If he's got to throw off his spot, the ability to throw from all different kinds of angles, that was on full display. He's dropping the arm slot, going sidearm to throw around guys. He's just a total ball of clay. And I put him to Pittsburgh. I'd be really excited to see Kenny Pickett. Kind of felt like the opposite of that, right?
Oh, yeah.
It was like Kenny was a fifth-year senior who had a breakout year in a good offensive system with Jordan Addison and could run, but just he felt like a high floor type of player. And Cam Ward is a high ceiling type of player with, admittedly, a low floor. But if we're going to sit here and try and make this thing work with Justin Fields and Russell Wilson this year,
yeah,
take your swing of the bat with Cam Ward. This is the kind of organization that has the stability to do it. Hopefully you can find a vet to help build him into your program. But yeah, he's a really electric player.
All right. Favorite fits. We're breaking those down for you here on the other side of it, folks. Be sure to stick with us. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. PrizePicks is the only real money daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy so that your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets hurt. PrizePicks puts their members first, so all the withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I get money in as quick as 15 minutes. There's some stuff I like this week. How about this? Lamar Jackson, you can go more or less on 1.5 touchdowns. That includes pass, rushing, and receiving touchdowns. More. How about this one? Jordan Love, more or less on 7.5 rushing yards. He's going to get more than that, right? How about this one? Khalil Shakir, more or less on 4 receptions. I like that for the Bills. I like that against Arizona in week 1. So check it out, folks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNFL on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. What is it, Kyle? What's your favorite fit? You got 32 picks here. The one that you are most geeked up about right now, who do you like?
I'm going to go with a running back. A first-round running back.
Never change, Kyle Crabbs.
Ashton Jeanty, Boise State. Do you see any of his runs over the weekend?
I did, yeah. I think he's on the list for this week, right?
6 touchdown runs that he had. Unbelievable player. Man, he's listed 5'9", 215. So he's dense. I gave him to Dallas at 19. I had Dallas sneaking in the playoffs as a wild card team at 9-8. If this team can take Ezekiel Elliott at number 4 overall, with what the state of the affairs is with that room where they brought back Dalvin Cook and Jerry Jones wants you to know that their ages add up to 59 or 58. That was an important thing for him to throw in his question asked about how Zeke and Dalvin are going to be able to contribute to their backfield this year. Go out and get this cat. He is electric. It's contact balance. He's involved in the passing game. He's a complete looking player. I love his game a lot. And I think going to Dallas, where they have made investments in the offensive line, obviously, where they had BB and Guyton, they have we'll see what the long-term outlook is for Zach Martin. And then they obviously have Tyler Smith as a really powerful player. Whether you're going to work it out with Dak or not, even if you don't work it out with Dak, you may want to get a back to put whoever you have coming in there, be a successful player. I had them they'd be picking QB 5 in this class, which I think has some questions, whoever that player ends up being. So Ashton Jeanty, Boise State running back to Dallas.
I just want to ask you this question because selfishly I want to hear about this player because, boy, he looks like a pterodactyl. I'm talking about Michael Williams, the Georgia edge rusher. Yeah, I'm going number 14 to Chicago, which, an impact rusher would certainly do a lot for them. But I don't know much about him, but I saw the clip that Jordan Reed put out.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's like salivating type body composition.
Freakish.
Boy, can he play?
He's very toolsy. It was unfortunate. He ended up getting injured against Clemson with an ankle injury on a low block from the Clemson running back. And I think that's the thing. He showed up in such a big way as a freshman. And then you're kind of just waiting for him to take the next step. And you were kind of hoping this would be the year where the leap would happen. And now we get to deal with an ankle injury. How bad is it? It's still very early, hard to say. But I think if he's going to live up to all-world type potential, oh my God, he's got 36-inch arms, all the tools in the world, and he's explosive. He's very explosive. I think Jordan kind of covets him in that maybe edge one conversation, maybe getting up into the top 5-8 picks of the draft. Mm-hmm. But for that to happen, he's got to put it all together. And I think that's just the thing that we're waiting to see. Is it going to click into place, or is he going to be one of those guys who, if he does come out this year, it's yeah, the traits are amazing, but
you had a couple of corners here I wanted to ask about. We got Will Johnson going early out of Michigan. Morrison out of Notre Dame going early. Tetairoa Davis out of Arizona going top 15 as well. Yeah. What's the race for CB1 like? How does that shape up? I mean, is it Johnson's world and everyone's living in it, or do we have some contenders here?
Well, I think you also do have to acknowledge Travis Hunter as a potential piece of that conversation. I have him going. Him and Will Johnson both went in the top 6. Johnson is just authentically, who's the best player in the country at their respective position? It might be Will Johnson. The instincts, the physicality, the speed, it's all there. So I don't want to say it's his world and everybody's living in it. I don't want to say I feel bad for, but I think it's going to be a quiet year for Benjamin Morrison. I don't think that you're going to get he's going to get a lot of action this year.
One of those, yeah.
Because he's such a well-established player. There was a new player that came in. Cam Hart left last year, and A&M came in. They threw the ball a ton at the guy opposite of Benjamin Morrison because they knew, well, it's a young guy. Let's see what he's got. I think he's a sophomore. And he was pretty well up to the task. But that whole defense and Notre Dame looks like the real deal defensively, obviously, and Wegman didn't play a great game, but some of that was, let's be fair, the Notre Dame defense on the road. I think Morrison's not going to necessarily get ball production, but you're going to have to look at the tape. But I went into this a little bit on the analysis. Guys that Benjamin Morrison locked horns with last year included Marvin Harrison Jr., Brendan Rice, Jamari Thrash, Emeka Ibuka, and then Ayo Manor, the Stanford wide receiver who's going to be a draft pick this year. It's like half their games last year were guys that were NFL receivers that he locked up against. And the only regret I have is that Evan Stewart transferred away from A&M, because I would have loved to have seen him locking up Evan Stewart and see what that battle would have looked like this weekend.
Okay, let's end on this one. You gave your favorite fit, and it was the Boise State running back to Dallas. Do you have a defensive fit that you really love?
Defensive favorite fit.
I mean, there's some low-hanging fruit here, but obviously the whole round is your option.
I'd go with both the Michigan defensive tackles as fits that I really like. Mason Graham reunited with Harbaugh.
That's a lock of the century. That's if that guy's on the clock when the Chargers are on the clock, he's the pick.
I mean, come on, it's they have the need there. Obviously, they're picking up waiver wire guys to bring in and try and, but they got Tier Tart, I think.
Them in Dallas, man, trying to find some defensive tackles here on the doorstep of the season.
But the other one was Kenneth Grant to Houston. And Houston's defensive interior's fine. They picked up Fali Fatukasi this year. They have Mario Edwards, Tim Settle. But if you could get an asset there, and Kenneth Grant is a big boy. He's like 330 plus Bruce Feldman's freaks list type of player. Length, explosive power. You think about putting that in the middle of what Houston already has defensively. I think that's a missing link piece for D'Amico Ryans and his defense. You think about what Javon Kinlaw theoretically could have been when they picked him out of South Carolina and San Francisco. I don't think Kenneth Grant, at least right now, profiles as much of a disruptive player as what Kinlaw did at South Carolina, but I think he can get there. And the hardest thing about that evaluation is how much they rotate on that Michigan defensive line. So he's a potential breakout type player for me, and I really like the fit with Houston.
So you have it, folks. Kyle Crabbs Mock Draft 1.0. A link in today's show notes for you to check that out. Also, be sure to check out a lot of the content that we have coming this week. We're going to give some season predictions. We're going to look at week 1. We got takes on Friday. A loaded week here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We'd love it if you took a second to rate, review, share, and subscribe. Have a great day, everyone, and we'll catch up with you again real soon.